starting with the NBA, the trade deadline is coming up March 25th. What kind of moves do you see the Chicago Bulls making?
That's a good question because the Bulls are 18-21 as of recording this, and it's coming off a bad loss against the Spurs last night. The Bulls really are in a position where they can be buyers or they can be sellers. And depending on who you talk to, I think you'll get a different answer. Talking to me, I think the Bulls should be buyers. Reason for is they haven't made the playoffs in 4 years. They haven't made the playoffs since Jimmy Butler was traded. And they're in a position where the East is it's a reachable conference to make the playoffs and get like a 5 or a 6 seed for this Bulls team as it's currently constructed. However, if you're looking past this year, the Bulls aren't winning a championship this year. And they're probably not winning a championship or contending for a championship for another 2 or 3 if they can make the right moves. And I think this offseason or this free agency or trade deadline, could be that first step to really making some of those moves. They've drafted well the past couple years. Coby White, Wendell Carter, Lauri Markkanen. They've got complementary pieces in terms of veterans like Garrett Temple, Thaddeus Young, who have been playing really well. And then obviously you have Zach LaVine, who is just an absolute superstar at this point. I think the Bulls should be buyers, and I think they should go out and get themselves a player in the backcourt that can complement Zach LaVine and try to put a tandem of 2, maybe not superstars, because you're not going to get a tandem of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You're not going to get a LeBron James and Anthony Davis, obviously. But I think you can go out and get a Lonzo Ball or get a Victor Oladipo to complement Zach LaVine, and you don't have 2 superstars, but you have 2 all-stars on your team at that point. And I don't think anybody's good enough to make a run in this NBA without 2 all-stars on their team. And I just don't see that in White or Wendell Carter Jr. or Lauri Markkanen. And the Bulls have an opportunity to go get one of those this trade deadline.
Oh, yeah. I kind of see an opportunity with Minnesota. They can get like D'Angelo Russell or Karl Anthony Towns. But it's the elephant in the room is Lauri is probably 90%. It's pretty 90% certain he's going to be traded.
Yeah.
He's the most marketable piece to sell.
He is. He's also a restricted free agent. So therefore, whoever does obtain him has a year of control to where they can go ahead and work out some sort of extension or re-sign him. I think if you're looking at if you're Arturas Karnisovas or Mark Eversley, who's the front office, who could make up the front office duo of the Chicago Bulls, I think what you're doing first is you're saying, okay, Zach LaVine is off the table. I know that people have toyed with the idea of LaVine gets you the most in return, so maybe LaVine is on the block. Zach LaVine cannot be on the block. I'm sorry. He's got to be a Bull for the rest of his career at this point. I mean, he's the closest thing we have to Derrick Rose. That's not a knock against Jimmy Butler. Just Jimmy and Derrick were not the same players, but Zach LaVine brings more excitement to a game-by-game basis than Jimmy Butler did, and that's why I say he's closer to Derrick Rose. For a front court perspective, you do have a lot of talent. You have 2 former seventh overall picks in Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. Markkanen probably gets you the most in return because he's more versatile in today's NBA. He could play outside. He could put the ball on the ground and dribble to the hoop. He can create his own shot. He can shoot the 3. Obviously, he can rebound. I just don't. I've always said this. Him and LaVine don't fit together on the court. They're too high usage of players, and I'm sorry, LaVine deserves more of the ball than Markkanen does. So if you could ship off Markkanen and say pair Markkanen with a Thaddeus Young or a Garrett Temple to a team who's looking to make a run in the playoffs, someone like maybe not Minnesota. Minnesota makes sense because D'Angelo Russell, I think, could be a good option. But if you look at like Golden State, and Golden State maybe wants to move on from Andrew Wiggins, you have an option there. Or if you look towards New Orleans, who New Orleans has very kind of adamantly said that we don't know if this is the makeup of our team, Lonzo Ball is right there on the table. And they've said that Lonzo Ball is on the trading block. Brandon Ingram even too. And I think Brandon Ingram could play nicely next to Zach LaVine, as long as you can also get rid of Otto Porter. But there's options. The Bulls have options, which is something that we haven't been able to say in the last couple of years.
Back to the Warriors. One thing that came to my mind is like Bulls lack on the defensive side. Would making a trade to get like Draymond Green, I think that would be a beneficial trade. probably get away Lauri or someone like Porter Jr. within this acquisition.
Yeah, I think because the Bulls do that. The Bulls struggle defensively.
Mm-hmm.
They are one of the 5 worst defensive teams in terms of points per game, I believe it is, if not the worst. Their defense is one of the worst in the NBA.
It's bottom half for sure.
Yeah, it's bottom
no
half.
Doubt.
And the defensive efficiency numbers are bad too. They don't create a lot of turnovers. They're a mediocre rebounding team. Draymond Green, in terms of his age, doesn't make sense, but Draymond Green makes sense in a lot of ways. One, because the old story, the Bulls or Tom Thibodeau wanted to trade or draft Draymond Green when he was coming out of Michigan State, but they opted for Marquise Teague as well. Mm-hmm. So Draymond Green has always had like this connection to Chicago. It fit more with when Tibbs was there, but I think the Bulls, who need to improve defensively, Draymond can be a facilitator a lot of the ways that Thaddeus Young has been when he's played. But I think more so the Bulls do need some sort of veteran presence, but one that maybe carries a little bit more talent than Thaddeus Young, who's clearly maxing out what he can do right now. And it's been awesome, but like, how sustainable is Thaddeus Young's run of 12.8 rebounds, 7 assist games? Like, Draymond Green makes sense. He would fit within the cap. I really like the idea of Victor Oladipo. That also improves your defense. The issue is whether or not LaVine and Oladipo can coexist, because they both are technically just pure 2 guards. And Oladipo's a little too small to play a 3. But I think Draymond, Lonzo, and Oladipo are probably the first 3 looks that you have when it comes to acquiring someone of bigger name at the trade deadline.
When you put it in perspective that Oladipo and LaVine would mesh well because they're 2, it does make more sense that Lonzo would be a good player to have, because he's like a pure point guard kind of player. He's not like, he came into the draft, he was like a pure shooter, what it seemed like from what the analysts say, but once he actually played, he was always like a pass first kind of guy. So that makes the most sense to me now that you explain a little bit more about how the 2 position is kind of filled by LaVine.
Yeah, because LaVine's he's not a one-trick pony. I mean, Jack LaVine has greatly improved his defense. He's greatly improved his passing. But at the end of the day, Zach LaVine is a ball-in-hand scorer. And Lonzo Ball can complement that very well, because Lonzo Ball is better playing off the ball. He's got incredible court vision. He's good defensively. And if we're being completely honest, Lonzo makes as much sense pairing next to Zach LaVine as it does just taking pressure off of Coby White. Because Coby White, I think we're starting to realize, is not a pure point guard. He's not a great passer. He doesn't have a huge basketball IQ when it comes to running an offense. He's talented. I love watching him shoot. But Coby White, I mean, the reason he just got benched by Billy Donovan last week and is now coming off the bench in lieu for Thomas Satoransky is because Coby White in the starting 5 was just not getting it done. And I think the Bulls need someone in that backcourt that can get it done next to LaVine. Zach LaVine's just carrying too much of the load.
Yeah, I think Bulls really need is a big man, like a true big man, like someone like Andre Drummond or like Al Horford.
Nikola Vucevic out of Orlando. Mm-hmm. That price tag would probably be way too high, but I mean, he would fit perfectly with Billy Donovan's offense. Drummond, I always had a love-hate relationship with Andre Drummond. Like, obviously the rebounding numbers don't lie. I mean, he's an absolute vacuum, but that's like all he can do.
Right.
The Bulls need it. Like, Wendell Carter Jr. is improving as a rebounder, but again, can't stay on the court because he fouls too much. Lauri Markkanen not strong enough sometimes on the defensive end.
He's just not very aggressive.
He's not. He's a passive basketball player, and I mean that works as a complementary piece. But if you're going to have him be your number 2 option on offense, like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So,
and just to make sure people know, I am a big Lauri fan. I've said it many times.
You wore a jersey to the office the other day.
Of course. He's my homie. I got to back him up. It was his first day back from his injury. So I just got to hype him up as much as I could. So with all love and respect, if you're watching this, homie, I believe in you, man. The Bulls may not be the fit for you, but I'll still root for you.
I loved the pick. Obviously, that pick came from the Jimmy Butler trade.
Yeah.
And when we took Markkanen, I liked it. I like Lauri Markkanen as a player. Sometimes good players just don't fit in their first home. It happens. You've seen it time and time again. So exactly. Look at Julius Randle. Julius Randle was an all-star this year for the Knicks. Julius Randle couldn't literally hold water when he got drafted by the Lakers. So like sometimes that's just how it goes. Look at Lonzo Ball. He was fine with the Lakers, wasn't a number 2 caliber overall caliber player, goes to the Pelicans. Lonzo Ball is a top 10 point guard now in the NBA playing with the Pelicans. So like it just happens like that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. We touched on the points allowed for the Bulls, but the biggest thing I think kind of bothers me is the turnovers. The Bulls lead the league in overall turnovers. Do you have any idea? Is there a certain certain player, or some sort of play style that's kind of causing this in terms of defense or turnovers?
It's not having a true point guard, which we
Mhm.
just alluded to.
Exactly.
Coby White is a turnover machine mainly because he's just not comfortable being a pass first guy. So when you're starting point guard who you took with the 7th overall pick, that's a lot of draft equity. Like you are relying on that guy to be your point guard of the future. And he's not a pass first guy. He wasn't a pass first guy in North Carolina. He's not going to be a pass first guy now. Like it stems from the fact that the Bulls don't have a true operator playing the point guard. Like I said, love Coby White. It's just the Bulls, it starts up top. If the Bulls have a point guard who helps turns the ball over less, you're going to run into situations where guys like Markkanen and Wendell Carter aren't being doubled down in the post, thus not being great passers themselves, turning it over. Zach LaVine, I'm fine with Zach LaVine's turnovers just because his job is to be aggressive. And being aggressive means you are going to turn the ball over sometimes. That's just how it goes. LeBron James turns the ball over. It happens. Russell Westbrook turns the ball over like 8 times a game. That's just what aggressive players do. And we give Zach LaVine a pass for being an aggressive player because that's what the offense needs. The Bulls fix their turnover problems by getting a pass first game operating point guard. Simple as that.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Wow. Never really thought of it that way, honestly. I mean, I thought it was just a mix of like so many players, including Zach, with just being a turnover machine. But when you put it in perspective that he's a ball dominant person, he has more minutes, he has more touches, it's gonna most likely happen. He's gonna turn over the ball.
Yeah, to use a football analogy, like we often consider Brett Favre to be the greatest quarterback of all time, or one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time. Brett Favre is the NFL history leader in interceptions. Why? Because he's an aggressive quarterback who threw the ball and took chances. We like that about Brett Favre. He's the gunslinger. Mm-hmm. We love that. But when you do that, you're going to turn the ball over. It's just the name of the game. It happens. So not saying that Zach LaVine is Brett Favre, but I'm saying, you draw from the same storyline there, wherein you have a guy whose job is to be aggressive. He's going to turn the ball over.
I mean, being aggressive is better than being passive. So
100%, especially in today's NBA.
Exactly.
Can't be passive.
Exactly.